So popping back in, welcome back. A little bit of technical issues there as I was booted out. We were just discussing detective fiction as an example that we can maybe all relate to. Thinking about Benedict Cumberbatch in the modern rewrite or the update of Sherlock Holmes, which is, as we all know, excellent. Um, as an example of some of the conventions of detective fiction. Yes, yeah. No, lunch very soon, Yala. I'm just going to finish off, if I may, this little section, and then I will send you away. I know it's 11:30, or it is going to be. Um, Subject and theme. So we've got these ideas of crime, suspense, solving crime, understanding motives for crime. And the detective fiction genre really first arises in the 19th century, and it's writers like Wilkie Collins, with the Moonstone, Charles Dickens, for example, one of my favorite books of all time, Bleak House, where Inspector Bucket investigates a mystery and tries to understand why it's all happened. So this one of the themes. Not just the subject, it's about crime, but yeah, 1800s, 19th century. One of the themes of detective fiction is what I've written there as well, epistemology. The detective is kind of, well, we can say 1800s, but it's a bit like counting your birthdays. Thank you, Yala. Yala wants lunch, so he's going to give you a very quick answer. The theme of the detective is, how do we know anything at all? And if you think about Cumberbatch and his Sherlock Holmes with the Mind Palace, it's this attempt to understand knowing itself and how we can ever know anything. So it's why detective fiction is so strong. Crime fiction as well, this idea of murder, death, and mortality. Um, so, also another thing about conventions in detective fiction. So, you can see every detective um, bit of detective fiction will include these sort of ideas. The characters are very much stock conventional characters. The detective, who's the guy who's going to try and work everything out. The sidekick. Nearly every detective has his Holmes, his his helper, his accomplice, often somebody who doesn't see or understand the world in the same way as he or her in this. There's often the villain, the adversary, or in the case of Sherlock Holmes, we have Moriarty, the arch nemesis. We have the victim, we have the suspect, and of course, most importantly, the red herring, the false suspect as well. Suspicion, to develop suspense, nearly almost always has to fall upon somebody who is not guilty of any ultimate crime at all for it to work, basically, in terms of its genre conventions. So these are the conventions, these are our expectations. I'm going to end after this as well. So we'll have to come back for a bit and then we'll do the two tasks afterwards. Story and perspective. So when we talk about story, story means a series of events as it actually happens. Okay. A narrative or a plot is how it's reconstructed and in what order it can be told. And that's important to remember. Okay. So we have a story, and often the plotting or narrative is flashbacks. There's a sense of going between two different timelines. I haven't actually put an exposition for this, but the story is sort of crime involving murder, generally speaking. Very important, unexplained or unclear motive. The detective solves the crime, and this usually understands the detective understanding the motive. In twists, the sidekick may understand the motive. Often, as you see in Sherlock Holmes, the detective and the arch nemesis understand the motive together or have a connection. The way it's often then told in terms of perspective, looking at the narrative, is the point of view is normally person narration. So we have a narrator often in the Sherlock Holmes story, it's Holmes narrating it, but that third person doesn't actually understand what's going on or the mind of the detective until afterwards. So it's a reconstruction. Could go on as further as well. The other thing that we have is we have a reconstruction in terms of rebuilding a narrative of an account of what's happened before in terms of the timeline of the crime and the timeline of solving the crime, and that could be years apart basically. So these are clear expectations, and this is a wonderful way to interrogate and work with genre. At that point, I'd like to say thank you for listening to me for the moment. We've still got a bit to go with this sort of presentation point, and we'll do that after lunch. So I'd like to say, let's have lunch. Make it so. Do we have any strong opinions? Can I start a little bit early in the afternoon? May I start at 12:15 so I can just get 15 minutes and do my presentation, and then you'll have an hour for task one, half an hour break, an hour for task two. Any objections to that? Is 45 minutes enough? Going once, going twice, going 3 times? Yes. So sold to Romulus. Reconvene 12:15 for 12:20, and that's typical. Again, formulaic language, just representing at 12:15 for 12:20, which means it gives you a 5-minute thing. See you in a mo. Have a good lunch. Thank you for listening.